Luckily, John's been in touch. He says, James, it must be very hard for you to keep a straight face when talking about dictators. The USA has invaded 50 countries and overthrown many more since the Second World War. They've sold chemical weapons to so-called dictators when it suited them, and now they have started World War III in a proxy war with Russia and will discard the Ukraines when the time comes. You know it is a fact, but you just can't admit it. So, these people walk among us. Even if everything John wrote was true, it wouldn't in any way justify the idea of not helping Ukraine resist Vladimir Putin. But that's what I mean by having your brains boiled. And some of us are born with boiled brains. Some of us have boiled brains thrust upon us, and some of us achieve the boiling of brains through effort and influence. A quick visit to Idiot's Corner, shall we? Steve asks, why are LBC not discussing the scandal of MPs earning a fortune in second jobs like Theresa May? Because it's 2 or 3 days old, Steve, and we talked about it then. But enjoy your time in Idiot's Corner this morning. There's lots of company. The idea of public money being spent on looking after people who need help is very easy to portray as profligate or as people who don't really need help. Here you go. Here's a text saying, "OMG, stop whining." Now, that is obviously coming from either someone who's borrowed their dad's phone and is making mischief, or someone who is very, very, very damaged. But that person has a vote, and they will vote to slap anybody in the face, up to and including themselves. So someone called Fred has been in touch to say, so here it is. So flirting with builders is a crime, is it? They should just stick to their class and caste. How dare they try to attract a non-working class woman? I love that from Fred. So Fred thinks that somewhere in the country there's a little boy that says to their mum or their dad, so how did you meet? How did you and Mummy meet, Dad? And Dad says, I shouted something about her breasts from the top of the scaffolding on a building site I was working on, son, and we've been together ever since. I mean, don't be like Fred. Before any racists text me, I'm aware of an Afghan asylum seeker murderer who's in the news today. But I am no more disgusted by his actions than I am by murders committed by people who aren't asylum seekers. All right? That makes you weird, not me. You think that the gravity of a crime or the disgust you should feel at a crime is influenced by the ethnicity or the asylum status of the criminal, then you're a racist. It may come as a bit of a shock to you. You may not be ready to address that simple fact yet. But if you think that a murderer who is from Afghanistan is more egregious, more disgusting, more worthy of comment than a murderer who is from Aberdeen or Birmingham, then you are being racist. Okay? Don't feel bad about it, because 60, 70, 80% of the British media indulges in precisely the same bigotry and prejudice. Some of them actually deliberately and very successfully whip it up. But there it is. I mean, that is just a matter of fact. We're a very, very tolerant country. Some people balk a bit when I say that, but there are still epic reservoirs of intolerance, of bigotry and prejudice. Unbelievable. So here it is, Rob in Nebworth. He says, James, are you hoping the topic being covered by every other presenter on LBC and every other news channel will just go away? I'm quite interested to hear your views on the subject of trans versus women's rights, says Rob in Nebworth, who must be fascinated to hear my views on that. So I think we did an hour on it last week, Rob. But the really good news is that you can read about it in my last book. If you really are interested to hear my views on the subject, mate, How Not to Be Wrong. The Art of Changing Your Mind. It's just popped to my inbox. Here's one here. Change the record, you, and I can't read that word out. I hope the police and MI5 are keeping tracks on you, you traitor. That's from someone who voted for Brexit and was persuaded to do so by people who are not going to face any consequences whatsoever. But on the other hand, Rob writes, Rob's in Nebworth, that rings a bell, actually. Haven't you been in Idiot's Corner, Rob, in the past? I think you have. But anyway, let's see if you qualify for a double entry. Starmer was skewered today, not only by Sunak on his awful silence on women's rights. Was it all women on the front bench of the Labour front bench today, I think?
Certainly majority,
sitting alongside kids. So not only for his awful silence on women's rights, but also by Flynn on his woeful Brexit stance. The next election is not in the bag by any means, and I'm no Tory, says Rob. Here's someone. Kevin Skinner. So wrong. When will you hit the streets and understand it is not one immigrant, it is thousands? So there's someone who is doing the job of what used to be the job of Rupert Murdoch columnists. He's taking a fear of foreigners and turning it into a political position. So the newspapers don't need to do that anymore. I mean, they carry on doing it, but the public wouldn't be lapping it up like Kevin here is if they didn't have this forum themselves. Pension and other things. Just to clarify, I think, Jason, probably you're the only one who didn't understand, mate, but I like to do bespoke radio for the hard of thinking. Jason writes, you said every kid gets a free school meal, and then he said it's only for families earning less than £7,400. There's a big difference. Listen, mate, it's unlikely, don't you think, that I would be on the radio missing that point if it was indeed a point? So at the moment, it's only families earning below the £7,400 threshold that get a free school meal. As of this announcement today that you've just listened to, Jason, it's everybody, including those who earn above £7,400, which is why I asked about my own children, because, hold the front page, I earn more than £7,400 a year. But I'm happy to clear that up for you, Jason. I won't even put you in idiot's corner because I'm feeling so generous and at one with the universe. Dan says, you're reaping what you and the rest of the woke brigade have been sowing for the past years. You can't have it both ways, old chum. You categorically can't have it both ways, Dan. But you can have two completely different things eliciting two completely different responses. So, for example, not teaching or wanting anything about the fortunes built on slavery with which stately homes were built on display in stately homes is ridiculous. Not calling a fat kid in a book by Roald Dahl fat is also ridiculous. I hope that helps, but I've got a horrible feeling it probably doesn't.